again, you're watching Sky News. The US Senate is currently voting on a deal to end the government shutdown. But it appears an agreement between the Democrats and Republicans has been reached. That's certainly what we're hearing. They're still counting at the moment, but it does look as though that's the case. Hundreds of thousands of government employees were forced to stay at home today after the Senate had failed to agree a deal before the weekend. Joining me to discuss this is... Anybody want to tell me? Who have I got? Tell me who I've got. Oliver McGee is joining us, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Transportation in the Clinton administration. Sorry about that, Oliver. I had two guests that I was planning and I wasn't sure which one it was going to be. Great that we've got comms with you. Welcome to Sky News. Talk to us about how your country could have found itself in this position.
Well, this was basically a game of high-stakes negotiation. We are very, very happy to hear that the lawmakers stayed with it over the weekend, worked overtime when all other workers in the government were really forced to stay home. But our lawmakers came together with the president and the bipartisan group came to an agreement to essentially promise to have further discussions on immigration for on the February 8th extension on the government. And this happens all the time. This is the 17th shutdown that we've had in modern presidential history, and 5 of them were under Jimmy Carter. And all cases, the government was opened back up on provisional appropriations, provisional funding, while sticky issues were hashed out. And in this case, we're talking about the immigration, looking at merit-based immigration, and then also trying to look closely at how we're going to do some type of reform so that we can take care of the 800,000 DACA immigrants who are here illegally against the law. And so what we really need to do is to try to establish some rule of law and immigration reform. And that's what the lawmakers agreed to further the discussion. But most importantly, okay, it's a discussion with the American people. The American people have to be involved in this discussion. And that's really why the American people won today. When the government's opening up, they're also opening the doors for us to have a rational discussion on immigration reform in the United States.
It was the Democrats' fault, though, wasn't it?
This was basically an acknowledgement that this was a Schumer shutdown. He said in 2013 on This Week, ABC This Week, that for immigration reform, he's willing to shut down the entire government to be able to get some type of immigration reform. This is a must-win for the Democratic base to establish new forms of electoral college math, and they're trying to use immigration to do that. But that's a tough call when you have American people who are really saying, we really want the rule of law and we want a merit-based immigration. And that's really what the White House is pushing very hard. But today, McConnell and Schumer and the president have agreed to talk it over further. And this time, I think it should be talked over with the American people. The American people are watching the shutdown very closely as well. And they spoke. They said this is a Democratic shutdown. This is a Schumer shutdown. And so this was a no-win for the Democrats, because you can't have soldiers working on their own dime when they're trying to protect the national security of the country. So that was as bad as going up against the NFL and the flag. So this is really what they had to do, is resolve this really quickly and get back to rational discussion.
Michelle Jawanda is with us now. Sorry about the communication issues a little bit earlier on. Michelle, good that you can join us here on Sky News this afternoon. Not everybody's voted, but there are enough of them now. We're hearing that have voted in favour so that the shutdown has been lifted, at least for now. Where are you on this, Michelle?
Well, you know, listen, the Trump shutdown, and we have to call it that, the president is in, and his party is in control of all 3 branches of government. The president also said, listen, bring me a bipartisan deal and I'll sign it. All of those things happened, and yet we found ourselves in the midst of the first president to reach a shutdown in the quickest period of time on the inauguration of his first year. So I think it speaks to a lack of leadership from this White House. When you ask the American people, do you want to come up with a solution, a bipartisan solution for these young people who've only known and pledged allegiance to this country, the American people say yes. And so what we now have have is a bipartisan deal without the president's involvement, because he's been nowhere to be found. And so my hope is over the next 3 weeks, you'll continue to see bipartisan negotiations to move forward, not just on the issue of DACA and Dreamers, but on issues around CHIP. How do we have permanent funding for young people when it comes to our health care? And, you know, to the point about military pay, you had a number of Democrats as well as Republicans saying, hey, even in the midst of the shutdown, let's make sure that there's no lapses in pay. And that was rejected. So it's really important that we kind of contextualize who's playing political footballs with what.
CHIP, child support here in the United Kingdom, just to clarify that for our viewers. Oliver?
Oh, the Children's Health Insurance Program.
Exactly,
oh, sorry.
Exactly. Go on. I wanted you. No, sorry, Michelle. I just wanted to bring in our other guest so that he would offer his views on what you had to say. I'm not sure if you can still hear me, Oliver. Can you?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I was being polite to my colleague.
Okay.
I can add a comment on this. This was really high stakes politics. It's just making the sausage in Washington. Again, as I'd say, this is the 17th shutdown. Typically, they're 1 to 2 days. It's always some type of debate and discussion that goes on with the $4 trillion budget for the federal government. And usually they're critical issues. Carter shut down the government 5 times during his administration. And Reagan had a shutdown in the very first year of his administration, dealing with military spending. And the balanced budget shutdown was the big one with Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich over the Christmas holiday. So this is part of the sausage making in Washington. I don't really get too fussy about it. The shutdowns today are expensive. They're about $1.5 billion a day. So that is important for people to look at. But ultimately, we got to closure and we got a positive vote today, and we move on, because this is a big agenda that's on President Trump's table in 2018. He's got immigration reform. He's got infrastructure reform, and he's going to be looking very closely at welfare reform. These are big, big issues. And if he gets a very good immigration reform package through, which he's at the table, he's always at the table, he's always at the table, he will be able to call this a bigger victory than the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So this is really a good day for the Trump administration.
Michelle?
So, you know, I think it's really important that we look at who's at the negotiating table. Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer are the 2 names that you've heard all weekend. You haven't heard the name President Donald Trump other than on Twitter. And I think it's really important that we recognize moving forward, we need leadership, a leadership that brings people together from disparate areas. You had Republicans like Lindsey Graham saying, listen, if you continue to listen to the hard right wing of your party and those staffers in the White House who aren't really committed to coming up with a bipartisan solution, we won't come forward, we won't figure out a way forward. And that's really what the American people want to see. They believe in government and believe that government can work for and on behalf of its people. But in order to do that, you have to have constant, consistent leadership, something that's been lacking in this president. But I remain hopeful. I have to be. I'm a progressive, and I have to believe in we, the people. That single phrase means everyone should be represented, and everyone's rights, including those young people, including our military, including young people who were without health care for months because of the resistance to reauthorize the Children's Health Insurance Program, that we can figure out a way forward together.
Okay, good to talk to both of you. You said we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Thank you. So still voting just at the moment, but it does look as though the impasse has gone and the American government is back in business, at least for now. More on that to come in just a few moments' time after the very latest weather.